Which one of you?
This one?
Black one.
Sure.
Because this is the media one. You will have to use this one. I will pass on to you mine. Okay? Mr. Markula goes first, then Vice President, then Mr. Rifkin, and then Commissioner.
Of course. Very good.
Everybody's ready? I told them. Good morning, or soon to be afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you everyone for coming. I will introduce first of all the guests who are taking part on this press conference. Then each of them will have their introductory remarks, and then we will have questions from you. So later on. I would like to introduce Mr. Vice President of the European Commission, Maroš Šefčovič, responsible for the Energy Union. Welcome, Vice President. Mr. Jeremy Rifkin, welcome. Thank you for finding the time to speak to our journalists and also to the distinguished guests of this summit today. Also, I welcome Mrs. Violeta Bulc, European Commissioner responsible for transport, and then Mr. Markkula, the President of the Committee of Regions. Welcome. And also, I can pass on the word to you, please.
Okay, thank you very much, and let's really be brief in summing up some what are the impressions at the moment. What do we feel? And I think the timing of this summit has been much better than we originally planned. Okay, we knew and wanted to have this in the beginning of the Slovak EU presidency, but now as a result of the Brexit, so everyone at all levels of governance, people, political decision makers are thinking, what now? What should we be doing? And it's not that much about the UK, what they will do, but what we, the others, 27 member states, will do. And here we get a very clear answer that we need to renew quite a lot of our processes, especially I stress the word processes. So how we make things to happen, but as well it means that in the governance level, we need to have much more activities at this concrete grassroots level, meaning especially cities and cities with their nearby regions. And we need to make this very concrete. And that's why both yesterday's interventions on how we can speed up the strategic investments and how to develop that methodology, how to develop the cohesion policy methodology, simplifying the processes. But especially when we link that then today's Professor Rifkin's kind of introduction, so what is really going on in global level. So we need to now to take that concretely. What we are from the Committee of the Regions perspective as well, we publicized here, launched this special book about the guidebook of regional innovation ecosystems, because the world is really more ecosystems. It's not so meaning much more complex connections, interaction between different activities. And that's why what we heard about today, so having certain kind of European master plan. It's master plan on motivating, encouraging, catalyzing the work at the city level to create the new solutions, both for the climate change, and that's especially important when we have Maroš here and Violeta here, so the two commissioners who are really guiding these concrete processes which have a direct impact on climate change as well, not only on the investments as such. Definitely then as well, these investments are renewing the urban agenda, urban environment, more to be citizen-driven, collaborative kind of urban design, bringing the positive elements for the quality of life. And that means then we need more this kind of pioneering events, but especially now what with this book we challenged our members, mayors, regional presidents, councils, bring in their own case, their own city or region as a forerunner. And now we are continuing that. We got a lot of new positive, strong encouragement on that as well, raw material to move on. So we will, I would say then in the final conclusions as well, so that minimum is so that we need one committed city or region to take the next steps in this ecosystem thinking, really be a forerunner, pioneer, and then do much more based on that, the collaboration between these regions. And that is something that we can showcase what can be done and what will be done. It's not dreaming, it's concrete measures that need to start, and for that we have now the Bratislava Declaration and then a kind of rolling on action plan by the Committee of the Region. We will push the other actors positively by encouraging them to do more.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vice President, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. If I would have to sum up with one message, all the discussions we had here yesterday and today, it would be that cities and regions matter. And why I would say so, because we have almost 80% of Europeans living in our cities, and of course our citizens want to live in the smart cities, cities which would have clean air, efficient transport systems. People want to live in energy efficient buildings, and very often they are running to the mayors, to the regional governors, please do something, we want to transform this region, we want to develop new business plans for our company, for our cities, and therefore I think it also it came very clear from the discussions we had here today and yesterday that the cities are the places where the future of politics is happening and will happen in the future as well. Thanks to Professor Rifkin, we had very interesting morning discussion about how this politics of the future would look like, and we see that it would be very much based on digitization, big data processing, Internet of Things, and so-called smart trends, which would really change the way we live. I think we already can see it around us, but also it would be having a tremendous impact on how the society would behave, and we will have a lot of opportunities how to manage this big transformation in a socially fair manner. What both of us, Violeta and myself, wanted to underline here is that the Commission wants to support this process, that we want to stand by side with the local authorities who are ready to lead to this economic transition. And we want to play the role of facilitator, of convener, making sure that we would provide good opportunities for this exchange of the best practices. So what we want to do concretely, the first announcement I would do is that in October, together with another colleague responsible for regional development, Corina Kretsu, we want to present so-called one-stop shop for local authorities, so they have access to all the data they are ready to store and share with the colleagues. Like, for example, that showcasing we have seen this morning, what's happening in Hauts-de-France, how the region between Rotterdam and The Hague is transforming itself. All that information, all the data collected would be shared on this platform, which would be run by the European Commission. Together with Corina, we are also looking for the way how we can use better structural funds. Let's not forget that 80 billion of euros will be invested in the cities between 2040 and 2020 from this financial perspective, and 50 billion out of this 80 billion will be managed directly by the local authorities. So that's, I would say, first investment, first contribution into promotion of these new trends in the city politics. And then yesterday, Jyrki Katainen was explaining how we want to bring private capital through the Juncker investment plan, through the risk-sharing facilities and equities to make sure that this huge potential, which is now in the banks, in the private sector, could be used for mobilizing the financial support for this change. Then, of course, Violeta, I'm sure, will speak how we want to create new political and legislative frameworks for the low carbon mobility, for better public transport. And the last proposal I would make is that next year we would like to devote much more of our time to showcase good examples in the regions and cities across Europe, so we can promote this idea of this economic transformation of the third industrial revolution and make sure that all Europeans can benefit from that. I'm sure that Professor can confirm that Europe actually did in this respect quite a lot, and therefore that movement which was started here when the mayors started to work together under the umbrella of the EU Covenant of Mayors actually became a global phenomenon. In spring, a few weeks ago, we made such an agreement with the special envoy of Secretary General of UN, former mayor of New York, Mike Bloomberg, on the global covenant of mayors, meaning that now this global covenant would develop the regional chapters for each continent, for each major region, to make sure that not only 7,000 mayors from Europe will be doing the same, but we will have more and more of our global partners. And currently, the mayors who are working together on this global platform together represent 600 million global citizens. And I think that's a big power, that's strong public support, and therefore I think that we have this, what Committee of Region was always calling for, this multi-level governance, global, European one, then of course regional one, and a very important level of local authorities and cities where the real change has to happen. So I think that we would be leaving from here full of hopes and new ideas, and I'm sure that just at the beginning of the Slovak presidency, we couldn't have a better topic to talk to, because I think it talks or it touches the lives of every citizens in Europe, because all of them would like to live in nice, well-run, smart cities of the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President. Professor Rifkin.
Professor, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm going to make just a few points. Number one, as I said in the talk, the major paradigm shifts in history, economic paradigm shifts, are when new communication technologies converge with new energy regimes, and they in turn converge with new modes of mobility to change the way we manage, power, and move economic life. Point two. The second industrial revolution was the biggest infrastructure build-out in all of history. It began around 1905, then in 1929 it was on hold, then the Depression, then the war. After World War II was the biggest build-out of infrastructure in history, the second industrial revolution, all three of these features: communication, centralized communication; energy, fossil fuel, nuclear power; transport, internal combustion, road, rail, water, and air transport. We laid out the interstates. We finished the rails. We electrified the entire regions of whole continents. We built out the suburbs, and this created prosperity for 3 decades in the build-out and 3 more decades for living off that infrastructure. That's point two. Point three, that second industrial revolution has peaked. Everyone's asking why productivity is declining. Everyone's asking why GDP is declining. And everyone's asking why unemployment's growing. Point three, the second industrial revolution of centralized telecommunication, fossil fuel, nuclear power, internal combustion, road, rail, water, and air transport, it peaked in its productivity in the major industrial countries over the last 15 years. It peaked. We can't get any more out of it. That's why productivity is declining, and that's why unemployment's growing. So you can have market reforms, labor reforms, fiscal reforms, monetary reforms, and you can incentivize 1 million Steve Jobs. It won't make any difference if your businesses are plugged into that platform of centralized telecommunication, fossil fuel, nuclear power, internal combustion transport, because we can't get any more productivity out of that platform. Next point. We are on the cusp of a third industrial revolution, a new convergence of communication, energy, and transport, which will be comparable in scope to the infrastructure build-out of the second industrial revolution after World War II, right now. The communication internet is converging with a distributed renewable energy internet and a digitalized, automated GPS and soon driverless road, rail, water, and air internet to create 3 internets to manage, power, and move economic life in the next period of history. And they ride on top of the Internet of Things platform, which will connect everyone with everyone. Next point. This build-out is different than past build-outs in the first and second industrial revolution, which were top-down. because they were centralized, communication, energy, and transport. This build-out comes like Wi-Fi, neighbor to neighbor, block to block, region to region, because the third industrial revolution is designed, the digitalization of communication, energy, and transport is designed to be distributed, not centralized. It's designed to award collaboration, not proprietary interest. It favors transparency instead of closed, and it scales laterally, not vertically. What this means for Europe and the world is that it has to be put in place laterally across cities and regions. The architecture, the platform requires that each region in each city customize to the region, and then like Wi-Fi, cross-border the connections. So every building's transformed into renovated, and every building becomes the node for the Internet of Things. Homes, offices, factories, they become the big data center, the micro power generation for your energy. They have all the smart technologies for the Internet of Things, and they're the charging stations for your vehicles, and then the buildings connect. The buildings are, forget the cloud, the buildings are the nodes for the Internet of Things. What this means is a shift in the way we think of political power. And that means that this has to be built out region to region, city to city. And they have to partner across regions. So this is the moment where the subsidiary principle, which was the key innovative, if you will, feature of which made the European Union unique, and that feature built into the Maastricht Treaty says that all economic and political development power must start at the region and local level. But then the other networks come in to help where they need, the national level, the EU level. So the nation states aren't going to disappear, but they have to be the enablers, create the codes, the regulation standards. The EU has to help make sure those regulations, standards, codes, and incentives are across the continent so we open up all the borders. Then the regions have to implement this, and the final point I would say, our experience in Haute-de-France, which is the third largest region in France now, and our new experience in Rotterdam to The Hague, 25 municipalities, and our experience now in Luxembourg, the first member state, here's what we take away from the experience. Something new is happening politically, and that is the regions have come together and created these plans and are executing them laterally. The governments are just facilitating. They're not laying down with the ministers the plan and then saying everyone else accept it. The regions, political and governance, are working with the business community, the universities, the research institutes, the NGOs, the neighborhood associations, and jointly they have created these third industrial revolution plans that are very sophisticated. Our global team works with them, but they've actually come up with them. Some of these working plans are 100,000-word documents. It means they all bought in, across political party, across ideological lines. And why is this important? Because once the regions feel empowered, that sense of alienation, feeling alienated from the nation, feeling alienated from the EU, and whether we deserved or not, once the regions realize that they have the power to make a difference, and something called an EU has made possible borderless Europe, you're going to see a change in the politics. In these regions, they're not talking about exits. They're talking about empowering other regions because they want to move this across a whole continent, ocean to ocean. And that's what you're seeing develop there. So what I would say here is with the leadership of Mr. Šefčovič in the European Union, it's a big mission. Smart regions, smart cities, smart Europe. This is a huge, huge mission. And with the leadership of the Transport Commissioner, because it's going to be key, it's energy and transport and communication, and with the leadership of the Committee of the Regions and Covenant Cities, we're going to see a very, very motivated Europe, region to region, I believe, in the next years. That's the next stage of the European journey. Then we get on with the next stage of the European dream, hopefully.
Thank you, Professor. Commissioner?
Thank you very much. And let me get straight to the point as well. First of all, I fully support what Maroš said. Cities and regions matter. They matter to EU, and I think we are more and more demonstrating that. The other thing I ask myself several times today when Mr. said that the GDP is declining, the efficiency is declining. Why? I'm really sure that one of the really important reasons is because we use old frameworks to support new economy. And we're trapping all the creativity that we have into something that is already obsolete. So yes, it is responsibility of all the leaders. It is responsibility of all of us that hold the space for others to be successful, that we transform the way how we cooperate, that we transform the way how we work. And I think that what you see here, this kind of teams need to be formed on all levels. We have different structures, we have different experts, and we need, of course, the users to be part of every solution that we create. And we're fully aware of that in transport. And let me tell you what challenged me, and then I will tell you also how we are going, or how we are addressing these challenges. First of all, for transport in this new millennium, we see a huge shift from supply-focused society to demand-focused society. And of course, for transport, that is a huge difference. How do we organize the transport facilities to support that? The other ones is that the chains are out and networks are in. So value chain is everywhere replaced now by the value network, which means much more dynamic environment, much more complex structures that need to be supported. Ecosystems are coming in big way because they empower people. They give a chance to share what we together create. And this is something that is now reflected in platforms which are still a little bit hierarchically managed, but we see more and more the emergence of true ecosystems, and sharing economy and collaborative economy plays an important role here. The other one is that we are moving from pushing to engaging. And again, transport plays an enormous role here. How do we create conditions for people to really engage, which means cross-border connectivity, which means decrease of bottlenecks, which means, of course, a much better mobility solutions, not just particular type, but focused on mobility services, mobility solutions. Of course, here, I will tell you, we're challenged a lot. And let now me go and focus on the elements that I see that can drive us and can give us a good solutions. First is digitalization. In order to support these shifts in the society, the way how people behave and the way how they want to be engaged, of course, we need to digitalize transport. We need to create a seamless layer that brings the independence between services and infrastructure. And we're pushing now. We are addressing all the missing links in all modes in order to create seamless transport digital layer where value-added services can be developed at the top. So you will see lots of activities, and that, of course, addresses largely also the challenges of smart cities, and not only smart cities, but also smart villages, because we need to bring this together. We cannot create even larger gap between the urban areas and unurban areas. The second thing that we are stressing very strongly in the solutions is decarbonization. It's a quality of life, and in decarbonization, we are now pushing really big way in all our investment plans to use alternative sources, especially renewables, for transport. Transport contributes 24% of CO2 emissions, and out of that, over 70% are created by road. Yeah, so we are challenged here, and that's why electrification and other alternative sources of energy are very important for us to bring them on board. We are excited about that part, about new propulsion systems, new batteries that are developed that will really address the needs that the users have. The third element, of course, that is related to decarbonization is also smarter use of existing infrastructure and existing modes, which leads us directly to multimodality, to really create better cohesion between different transport solutions. And at the same time, we are pushing now in all our investment plans for decarbonization through railway systems. So we are pushing freight to go on railways, but what we created with that is an incredible shift in road transport. We see now electrical trucks. We see electrification to be present everywhere now. We see electrical ferries. We see lots of electrification in ports. Like other modes want to prove that they can play decarbonization game as well, which is great, because for us, the final goal is that we have cleaner air and, of course, better conditions for life. Another shift is happening in transport to address the changes that I told you. Young generation finds spending in the car 3 hours to drive from point A to point B as a completely useless way of spending time. So they are much more open for public transport. They're much more open for collaborative solutions because they want to be connected. 3 hours of not being connected means 3 hours wasted for not creating something new and fresh and have a good conversation with friends. So we are shifting towards much more public-oriented services, and that applies to cities as well. Mayors, I'm really happy about that, are going along with the position that cities need to be given back to people, which means cars, vehicles need to be pushed out of the city centers, and of course public services need to be used in order to still ensure smart mobility. And through that, mobility becomes much more people-oriented. We see now solutions, we are supporting them to be demand-driven public transport, yeah? Not to have a fixed schedule, but the schedule should be dynamic enough that readjusts depending on the demand. Who's waiting? Is there somebody waiting? And then support the needs and, again, the demand, not supply-driven economy. So lots of exciting things, but I'd like to join to all of my previous speakers that in order to really address these challenges in an effective and efficient and sustainable manner, we need to be all part of decision making. And in transport now, we're very much engaging all stakeholders in the solutions, in trying to create together the big picture in which every single little part then can play a role and knows that it's connected to a bigger one. And I think this is what's exciting in the future, and that's where Europe has a huge advantage because we have active cities, we have active villages, we have active regions, and all we need to do now is actually start fostering this and holding the space that this kind of emergence can take place. And I know that we're going to get to where Mr. Rifkin was pointing, that EU has an incredible advantage to be well educated, to be really, the knowledge is well spread, and we need now to be interested enough to connect these dots, and we will create a really powerful networks. And transport will deliver, is delivering, and will be walking the path along with the users, businesses and citizens.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We have some maybe 8 or 10 minutes for questions. So first I'll start here, then back there, and there. Please introduce yourselves and pass on this microphone amongst yourselves because we need to use the microphones. Thank you. And thank you, President, for finding the time for the press conference.
Agaton Koziński, Polska, The Times Daily from Poland. I have 2 questions. First question to Professor Rifkin about European journey, as you said. We have in Europe a very severe migration crisis, financial crisis, and severe political deadlock created by these 2 crises. How to cope with it? Because, as I understood, you think about stronger cooperation between countries, stronger integration, a closer European Union, but in the same time we have this Eurosceptic wave, people who are against such a point of view. Brexit is one of the examples of this thinking, but in other countries we see the similar point of view. How to cope with this deadlock, how to break it. And the question to Commissioner Šefčovič, simultaneously in Warsaw we have NATO summit, and I have a question about energetic NATO, energy union. Is there a chance that European Union will start buying gas or oil from Russia together?
Thank you. Let's take another one.
It's better for me one at a time, because at my age, I have a hard time with it.
And then the lady, and then...
Sorry. I think the key problem we're facing in the EU, and it's true now in the US and else places, is no jobs, GDP down, productivity down, a feeling that it's not getting better, it's getting worse. This is the real problem. If that wasn't there, some of these other problems wouldn't be there, including the Brexit Leave campaign. What I would say to you is that the question is, the money is there to do exactly what I laid out. It's just that no one had thought about where the money is. And as I mentioned during my talk, on a bad year in the EU, we spend 750, 800 billion a year. 750, 800 billion a year, public-private monies on infrastructure across Europe. That's on just a normal year. The problem's not the money, it's where it's going, and that's what's holding us up. that money is going to second industrial revolution infrastructure, centralized telecommunications, fossil fuel nuclear power, internal combustion road, rail, water, and air transport. And we peaked on the aggregate efficiency and productivity in that platform over and over in industrial countries over the last 10 years. There's nothing more we can get out of that platform to manage power and move everyone's business. We have the numbers. So we need to reprioritize. And what we said in Brussels, if we simply reprioritize, so some of that money that goes to the regions and cities, et cetera, goes to a third industrial revolution build out of the communication, energy, transport, internet, and the platform that the commissioner talked about, the digital platform. And some of it stays in the second industrial revolution, but then the regions have to use some of that other money absolutely to lay out this infrastructure region to region. We can be there with an infrastructure build out finalized in 34 years. But the moment we start the infrastructure build out, jobs day one, guaranteed. And when you start deployment, jobs in the renovations, jobs for ESCOs, jobs in getting the renewables on. There are jobs all over the place once you start. So what I would say is, if we really want to go to the core of the problem, people sense that there is no future for them and no future for their children, and the millennials feel they don't have a future. This new infrastructure build-out, the biggest since World War II, which took 30 years, the second industrial revolution build-out, it's ready, it's now, and the EU Commission has reprioritized priorities, and it's all about digital, communication, energy, and transport, which will increase our productivity and dramatically plunge our ecological footprint and marginal cost, give rise to the sharing economy. All that's there. And you have commissioners right here, and other commissioners are all dedicated to the smart region, smart city build-out. Now what we need is regions and cities that partner with us, which is now happening, and make this happen, and do the customized plans in each region, cross-border, and move on jobs and businesses and infrastructure today. If it can be done in Haute-de-France or in the Netherlands, or if it can be done in little Denmark, and it's starting to be done in Germany, it can be done everywhere, literally everywhere. That's my read on this. And then you won't have the Brexits and all the other exits, because people will be empowered. It'll be their economic revolution. They'll be engaged. They'll be seeing it happen in the real world, in the regions where they're in, not from somewhere else that doesn't involve them.
Thank you very much. And the question on the energy union and energy NATO, as you suggested, this was actually the term which was brought by Donald Tusk to the European politics. This was the idea brought by another very important Polish politician, Jerzy Buzek. And I think that the idea of energy security and making sure that in Europe we are properly equipped to avert any the possibilities that the gas supplies could be again cut off to Central and Eastern Europeans was one of the, I would say, last pushes which we needed to start to look at the energy from the new perspective, because it was quite clear already for some time that the problems which are piled up in the energy and climate sector in Europe being caused by the fact that each member state tried to solve this energy transition dilemma on its own. And therefore, the new approach was taken, meaning that you cannot dissociate energy policies from climate policies, especially when we have such a robust arrival of renewables and where we all sign up to quite ambitious climate agenda in Paris. And if you talk about the reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions, of course we cannot do it in energy intensive industries or power sector only. So it's quite clear that transport must contribute, agriculture must be taken on board, and what Jeremy was just describing, we need to increase energy performance of our buildings, because almost half of our energy consumption, more than 40%, today is consumed for heating and cooling in our buildings. And with today's technology, we can do much better. And of course, we would need a lot of breakthroughs and new technological advancement in these areas, and therefore research and innovation would be all important. So here you have the 5 dimensions of the energy union. But the fact that for the leaders, the most plastic or vivid goal to achieve was the energy security, especially because the lessons learned from 2006 and 2009 in this region. So to come back to your question, in January we proposed security of supply proposal, which is now being negotiated among the member states and the European Parliament. I believe it will be done by the Slovak presidency. The discussions are quite well enhanced. What the security of supply proposal says is that we need to be much better prepared for any eventualities, meaning that we are now pushing for the regional contingency plans. What would happen if the supplies are cut off? That it's not the matter or the problem only that country which is affected by this, but that the neighbors should help this country, that they should be able to supply each other with the supplies of gas. Therefore, we need to have infrastructure which can supply the gas in the both ways. Therefore, we need to develop gas storages which would make sure that we are properly equipped for any eventualities. And in this case, I think we are already now much less vulnerable, and we would be much stronger by the end of this year, where all these new rules are approved. And in that case, I believe that we can resist any dominant supplier, we can resist any pressure, because we would have much more options how to buy the gas, and this common purchase of gas. It's one of the optionality which could be used in the case of severe crises. But I believe we will never get there, because we are opening the European market to LNG, to different suppliers, to new routes, and that I believe will help us to never had the repetition of the dramatic situation from 2006 and 2009.
Dobrý deň, Hanna Džurna z televízie TA3. Mám dve otázky. Prvá na pána Rifkina. V Európe je My to máme naživo. Vy to nemôžete nejako? Dobre. Viac ako 9 miliónov Európanov je bez internetu. Akým spôsobom sa dá možno toto vyriešiť? A určite to nie len otázka peňazí. Dobrým príkladom je napríklad Slovensko, kde už niekoľko rokov mal fungovať e-health a stále nefunguje. Čiže možno, či je to aj otázka vzdelania, alebo akým spôsobom sa dá podporiť digitalizácia. A druhá otázka na pána Šefčoviča.
Well, I think it's a combination. I think what you'll find is that a lot of people are without internet connection, older generation. I bet you if you took a survey across Europe, I don't think you'll find anyone among the millennial generations without internet connection. Smartphones are very cheap. They're relatively cheap. But now you can get the Chinese version of that $25 smartphone with a lot of computing power too. So I would be willing to bet some of it has to be with the old folks like myself not being yet comfortable with perhaps the internet connections. I don't think the money is the issue at this point, because it is so cheap to just get a smartphone with a service provider, and you can even lease it. It's just not expensive. I think it's education. Now, what's happening in Italy is, every member state has a digital champion. So Riccardo Luna is the digital champion in Italy, and what they've done is they set up a massive education program on television for the older generation. A lot of fun, cartoons, graphics, and everything. And it's really a fun show. People are all tuning into it, and all the older generation are learning right there on national television and getting engaged comfortably without any embarrassment. You need to have that kind of campaign to move maybe in maybe there's some more rural areas, there's small villages, or places where there's older generation in pockets. Have a national campaign and take a look what Italy has done, because it's the one country I think that's been very successful at this, and getting to those who are not yet connected.
Ešte druhá otázka na pána Šefčoviča. Čo si myslíte, akým spôsobom Brexit ovplyvní energetickú úniu? Či už môžeme byť konkrétnejší?
Myslím si, že v tejto fáze musíme vytvoriť dostatočný časový priestor na to, aby sa vo Veľkej Británii mohla vyriešiť otázka líderstva. Vidíme, že momentálne prebiehajú primárky o tom, kto bude budúcim šéfom konzervatívnej strany, ktorá zdám bude budúcou premiérkou Veľkej Británie. Podobné procesy sa rozbehli v laboristickej strane. Vidíme, že aj tí stúpenci Brexitu, ktorí najhorlivejšie bojovali za odchod Británie z EÚ, tak sa vzdali svojich funkcií. Čiže momentálne sme v situácii, že naozaj Európa nemá partnera na takúto debatu, na takéto rokovania. Veríme, že potom, ako bude ustanovená nová pani premiérka, bude mať oveľa konkrétnejšiu diskusiu o tom, kedy by chceli uplatniť tzv. Článok 50, to znamená, kedy sa začne proces, ktorý bude pozostávať z vyjednávania zmluvy o vystúpení Veľkej Británie z Európskej únie a potom určite budeme byť môcť oveľa konkrétnejší ohľadom toho, ako tento proces bude vyzerať. Čo je dôležité si zapamätať je fakt, že od toho momentu, kedy Európska únia, Európska komisia prevezme oficiálnu notifikáciu o tom, že Veľká Británia chce vystúpiť z Európskej únie, tak sa spúšťa časomiera a do 2 rokov od tohto momentu, bez ohľadu na to, či rokovania budú ukončené, alebo nie, Veľká Británia stratí práva členského štátu. Aj z tohto dôvodu, vzhľadom na to, že je v tom procese veľmi veľa nejasností, sme sa v rámci Európskej komisie rozhodli pokračovať v naplnení nášho pracovného programu tak, ako bol stanovený. O pár dní predstavíme veľmi dôležité rozhodnutie ohľadom toho, ako navrhujeme, aby si členské štáty medzi sebou podelili úsilie o tom, ako budú znižovať skleníkové plyny z tých oblastí, ktoré nespadajú pod obchodovanie s emisnými povolenkami. Čiže sú to presne tie oblasti, ktoré sme dnes už viackrát spomínali. Ako znížiť skleníkové plyny v doprave, v poľnohospodárstve a v energetickej efektívnosti budov. A každá krajina obdrží návrh zo strany Európskej komisie, aké percento to má byť. Čiže v tom návrhu, ktorý predložíme, tam bude percento aj pre Veľkú Britániu a to z toho dôvodu, že Veľká Británia bola vždy veľkou podporovateľkou boja proti klimatickým zmenám a podľa tých informácií, ktoré máme, samozrejme z expertnej úrovne, chcú naďalej zostať v tomto európskom zoskupení. Takto podpísali dohodu v Paríži, takto ju schválili, keď sme to spoločne podpisovali v New Yorku, takže myslím si, že my ako Európska únia musíme pokračovať v tých návrhoch, na ktorých sme sa spoločne dohodli. No a tieto problémy sa začnú konkrétne riešiť, až keď budeme vedieť presné parametre toho, ako si aj Veľká Británia konkrétne Brexit predstavuje.
Yes. Hello, my name is Pascal Anzens. I'm from Agence Europe. I wanted to ask my question in French, but I will try to speak in English with a strong French accent. So receive my apologies. No, it's fine. It's fine. So my first question is for the two commissioners. As you know, Corina Crețu triggered debates on the post-2020 cohesion policy, and there are huge debates huge debates regarding the future of the cohesion policy. For instance, yesterday, Mr. Markula said that the cohesion policy can be maybe in a tricky situation with the Brexit, and at the same time we have the rise of financial instruments, which is, in a sense, denounced by many regions which do not see it as a solution. So my first question is, how do you conceive the future of cohesion policy after 2020? Then I have two questions for Mr. Rifkin. The first one is, what is the best example, according to you, in Europe currently regarding the third revolution? And I understood that you are working with a French region nowadays. And as you know, the far right is very, very high in those regions. So do you think that far right parties, Marine Le Pen. So my question is, do you think that implementing efficiently your plan regarding the third industrial revolution could reduce the far right movements in Europe? And that's all. In fact, that's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Concerning your your first question. Currently, we are in the process of the midterm review of multi-annual financial perspective. So this is 7 years EU budget. And I think what we heard from the representatives of the region is, I would say, confirmation what we also feel in the European Commission, that we would need to change, and for that we need support of the member states and the European Parliament and the Court of Auditors, how to simplify the usage of the EU funds, how to make it more user-friendly for all those who are applying for the financial support. And this is really the question we need to resolve, because very often you hear that the local leaders are even afraid to use the EU funds because they're scared of the complexity of the level of the detail with which these projects would be prepared, and that's something what we are trying to resolve, and I know that our colleague Corina Crețu is working on it. Second, I would say very important element is that I believe that in post-2020 we will try to use the EU funds in a more efficient way. So I think we will see much more of a leveraging of our funds, meaning that this Juncker Investment Fund, which was such a pioneering project where we managed to mobilize within a short period of time, something like a year, 107 million euros through quite big, I would say, leveraging coefficient, would seem like inspiration how we can use the European funds in a way that they can bring more to the European regions and to the European member states. So that would be one change I would expect. And then concerning the UK, I just would remind that it's very difficult to say how exactly everything would evolve. But if we take, let's say, Norwegian example, because Norway very much wanted, and Norway is using to the fullest the single market of the EU, meaning they have to respect our legislation, they have to respect all our freedoms, and as a, I would say, additional one feature, I would add that per capita, Norway contributes to the EU budget more than the UK right now. So what I want to say is that to be on the European single market, it has a price. So I do not want to predict what would be the final decision here. Of course, the negotiations will be there, but it's very difficult to say right now how the Brexit might affect the overall level of the budget. Thank you. Jeremy, I think the rest was about the extreme right.
No,
I'm sorry, yeah.
Just really quickly. First of all, we have two challenges that we are now addressing. First is that we need to use the public money better and smarter. And the other one is that there is not enough public money to invest in all the needs, to address all the needs. So we need to bring fresh money on board. These are the two really important messages. First one we are addressing, we already started 2 or 3 years ago with bringing INEA agency on board that is now responsible for governance and for better evaluation of projects. And I think we really see some good results now, and this will continue to improve. The other thing is that we need to start blending money better and get more out of the invested money. And this is what Maroš already has addressed, is the new financial mechanisms. First one on board is so-called Juncker's plan, FC, 350 billion euros. Where we are learning. This is the first time ever in the history of EU that we have innovative mechanism on board. And look, it delivers. Over 100 billion euros have been already engaged in transport projects, and I'm very encouraged by that. And all this we will take on board, and it's not only the revisioning of 7 years financial planning, but next year we start preparing all new existing mechanisms for the next period, Horizon, then also the structure funds, the CEF money we will start planning, and we will bring all these learnings on board, and I'm sure we're going to create new mechanisms that will emerge out of that, but for sure blending will be the leading thought.
We have 3 jurisdictions in play right now. The flagship region is Haute-France. It's now an amalgamated region of Nord-Pas-de-Calais and Picardy. It's the third largest region, as you know, in France. Population-wise, it's 10% of France. We're in our third year of deployment there, so we can actually, we're in our third year of deployment there, so we actually can see results. The entire region's been mobilized. There are committees across all of the sectors, the business sector, regional government, local government, the universities, the high schools, the NGOs, the neighborhood associations, working in committees on deployment of projects and determining prioritization so that everything matches so we can build out the whole infrastructure. There's 380 programs in play right now. I think the budget right now is around 340 million euros. It's just beginning. And we have delegations coming there, and we invite all journalists and anyone, government officials, to come and see, because it's easy to talk. It's a different experience if you go there. For example, 2 weeks ago, I was in the Picardy section, which is mainly rural, because we spend much of our time before the amalgamation from Dunkirk to Lille. I was blown away by the programs that are already there. High-tech, beyond Silicon Valley, in this rural area. They've got many companies there, some with technology parks just being finished in construction that are doing biological substitutes for chemical-based products, and everything from circuit boards to pill casings. And they're bringing together consortiums of chemical companies and life science companies to make this happen. There are companies in this rural area who are doing the automated driverless electric vehicle build-outs. It goes on and on and on. So what we're seeing here is they created in this region an atmosphere of social entrepreneurialism. This is different than traditional entrepreneurialism. Social entrepreneurialism, they are collaborating across industries, social entrepreneurialism. They are collaborating with businesses across categories. They're collaborating with universities and businesses and government and businesses, and they realize that the new business is not, as you said, I think maybe your commissioner said this, it's not market transactions, traditional market transactions. It is providers and users coming together in networks to provision the networks and advantage everyone in the networks. This is happening, and we invite people to come and see on the ground. As to the political ramifications, this whole region is on board. Why? The president of the region, when he started this, who went out and he literally talked to every mayor, every village councilor across the region. It took months and months and months. And he said, this shouldn't be just one political party. We wouldn't, if it was the first industrial revolution or the second, you wouldn't say because the party in power wants it, if we get in power, we're not going to do it. Everyone got on board. Then the Chamber of Commerce, led by Philip Vasseur, who was here this morning, they ran 3,000 businesses through seminars on the third industrial revolution, smart regions, in 12 months. Seminars to get them on board. Then they brought all 200 high schools together in a consortium. And the first thing they got is a 650 million euro credit from the European Union, the European funds, to renovate the buildings, turn them into big data centers, micro power generators. All 7 universities have come together to transform pedagogy to the new revolution. It goes on and on. And what's exciting is we always talk about more collaboration and people working together. This is the first experiment I've seen across Europe where an entire region is working in committees. Not just a few, experts, and then you bring in the NGOs to get their advice and counsel. So I would say Haute-France as the region. The first flagship metropolitan area is Rotterdam to The Hague, 25 municipalities from the port to Rotterdam to The Hague. We're in only our 10th month there, finishing up the master plan, but again, they have hundreds and hundreds of people in these committees working with our global group, TRR Consulting, and they're putting the plan together. It's already a 100,000-word plan. So they'll move to deployment in January. So that's the urban metropolitan region. Haute-France is the region. And the third is the first nation state, Luxembourg. We're in our 10th month plan there. They will be the first member state to fully move into this transition. So it's early on, but given the experience we've had, and we had early experience. We've been in other regions before this, one in the United States and several here, but we didn't have the ability at that point because the European funds and other funds weren't registered toward these new priorities, so we got stopped cold. Now that under President Juncker's leadership, and now with the team here, this is moving. And I think, Commissioner, what you said, we've really got to deal with the regulations. Both of you said this. The biggest bottleneck now is bureaucratic regulations and old regulations. And I believe the regions can put tremendous pressure on the cities as they start transbordering, say we want this. As to the political implications, when you have a region totally involved, we've not seen opposition to this across the region. We have right, center, center left in this region. If you know the region, you know which region I'm talking about, correct? Everybody. But we have the full gamut of right to left in that region, and the entire council has voted for this third industrial revolution. Everybody has voted for it. So that wasn't by magic. That's because they all saw this made sense. They may have other positions on Europe, but my firm belief is once this moves, who's going to say no to Europe once they realize Europe is them? Europe is regions with regions, cities with cities. Europe is everyone interconnected so they can cross border.
I'm very sorry to interrupt. We could listen to you all afternoon, I believe, but we are running out of time. Thank you, everyone, for your precious time. Our guests will have to continue with their official program, so thank you for finding the time for the media, and see you.